You ever seen two moths pose for a picture like that? I mean, isn't it neat how they're just right there beside each other? Perfectly on those tree trunks. Well, that is amazing, isn't it? You know the other thing that's kind of interesting about the English peppered moth scenario? Guess what? English peppered moths don't land on tree trunks. They have been studying English peppered moths for 40 years, and to my knowledge, after looking through this, I think they've only found 2 English peppered moths ever, maybe 4, that they've ever seen land on tree trunks. English peppered moths move at night primarily, and they land on the underside of leaves. Green all the way around most of the time. So you ask, how in the world did they get pictures of the English peppered moths on these soot-covered trees? Well, if you're looking closely at those pictures, you understand that they certainly didn't take those from the wild. They made them up. Lots of times they would catch the peppered moths and they would glue them on the trees, or they would pin them on the trees, or they would artificially place them on the trees right next to each other, perfectly so that you could take this picture. The English peppered moth scenario is made up. It's fake. We've been knowing it for years. Now, watch this. Bob Ritter, Canadian textbook writer, he knew these were fake, and he said, well, I mean, you got to look at the audience. How convoluted do you want to make it for a first-time learner? He said, yeah, they're fake, but hey, we're getting across this idea really well, and we're talking to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders, and so you can't convolute it too much or they won't get it. They won't understand evolution if you try to tell them the truth about it, so you got to kind of just use this stuff as it is. Now watch what he says. Love this one. Well, the advantage of this example is it's extremely visual. Okay, let's think about that. Suppose I've got a theory that when white cows eat green grass, they grow purple spots. And you say, Kyle, that's the most ridiculous theory I've ever heard. I say, hold on just a second. It's because I haven't presented my evidence to you. And I say, if you will walk outside with me, you will see that this is the case. And I take you outside, and I've got a herd of 5 white cows, and they're eating green grass. And I say, look, guys, you come back after we eat some burgers, and you're going to see that they've grown purple spots. And sure enough, after we eat burgers, I take you out there to my 5 white cows, and sure enough, they've all got 25, 30 big purple spots on them the size of baseballs. And you say, wow, that's interesting. One of you goes over and you touch the white cow, the purple spot, and you say, wow, that is interesting. And your forehead itches, and so you rub your forehead a little bit, and your friend starts laughing at you. And you say, what are you laughing at? He says, you got purple stuff all over your forehead. Sure enough, you do. You look down on your hand, it's got purple stuff all over your hand. Looks like purple paint. You go over to one of those cows, you take a handkerchief or a paper towel, you rub on one of those purple spots, and you realize they're painted on there. You come up to me, you said, Kyle, it's ridiculous. These spots are painted on here. You lied to us. And I say, with a grin, yeah, but the advantage of this example of natural selection is it's extremely visual. What does that mean? It means, yeah, we know we're lying, but you can see it so well that we just don't want to change it. Watch what he says. We want to get across the idea of selective adaptation. Later on, they can look at it more critically. When is later on? You know, one of the people that I was reading about English peppered moths, he had a PhD in one of the scientific disciplines, and he was angry that he had never seen that the English peppered moth pictures were fake. When is later on? Is it in high school? No. College? No. Is it when they go and get a PhD in one of the scientific disciplines? Is that when you get to see that the English peppered moth stuff is fake? No. You know when you get to see it? Well, if you happen to come to a seminar on a Saturday, how many kids in the United States of America are going to come to a seminar like this on a Saturday and learn the truth about English peppered moths? 0.02%? 0.002%? And yet that is the only later on that anybody's going to see. Keep going with me. This guy's name is Ernst Haeckel. Ernst Haeckel in 1860 read Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species by Natural Selection. It was printed in 1859 in England, and it was translated into German the next year. I don't know exactly where it was printed, but it was printed in English, translated into German in 1860. Haeckel read it and said, wow, this is it. I love this theory. I'm going to prove it if it's the last thing I do. In fact, he came up with a biological law that proved evolution. And his law was called the law of embryology. And he said, ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Sounds smart, doesn't it? Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. And his students sat in front of him as he waxed eloquent about ontogeny recapitulating phylogeny. And they said, wow, that just sounds so right. And what in the world does that mean? It's a good question, isn't it? Here's what it means. Ontogeny is the development of the embryo of an organism. Phylogeny is its supposed evolutionary history. He said that the embryo, as it develops, recapitulates its evolutionary history. So, if you focus on a human embryo, after 3 days, it's kind of in its very early amoeba-like stage. If you focus on it later, it's in its fish stage. You focus on it a little bit later, it's in its lizard stage. You come in a few days later, a few months later, it's in its pre-mammal stage, then a primate stage. You can just zoom in on the embryo at the right time and you'll catch it in whatever stage it's in. Its ontogeny goes through its evolutionary history, its embryological development. They said, you got any evidence for that? He said, yeah, man, we got plenty. He said, look at these pictures. He said, you're looking at a salamander, a turtle, a chicken, a pig, a dog, a rat, a human, and boy, they all got gill slits, every one of them. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? They all got gill slits all the way across the board. He said, that's the fish stage. And they started looking at the embryos and they said, hold on, Haeckel, your drawings don't look anything really like the real embryo. Where'd you get them? He said, oh yeah, from what I understand, he admitted to drawing some of them from memory. He said, I just drew some of them from memory. And from what I understand, he admitted to drawing one embryo 3 times and label it 3 different things. So like he would draw a pig embryo and he would label a dog, a pig, and human. And they said, you just made this up? He said, oh yeah, I just made it up. But we do that all the time in science. Really? Well, not in the science where I come from. Where I come from, you just don't make up stuff. You present what is factual. Now, here's what's interesting about that. That was in the 1860s. By about 1872, 1875, everybody in the world knew this was false. That's where it should have died. Oh, it didn't die there because do you know that the bulk majority of textbooks that teach evolution use Haeckel's embryos and have been using them for the past 130 years. The irony of it is Haeckel's embryos are still used as some of the primary evidence for evolution. Let me explain. Here's the practice that I use all the time when I'm confronted with someone who hates our material, which is very often on a regular basis. A guy wrote the other day, said, you guys are idiots. I can't believe that you're in the 21st century putting out the stuff on your website that you do. You guys have no clue about anything scientific. Everything on your site is wrong. You are a disgrace to the human race. I said, in a nutshell, we appreciate your feedback. While we respectfully disagree, we do think we can have a productive discussion about this. Could you present to me the one fact that you think is the strongest that shows that our material is wrong or that shows that humans evolved? The one. Just the one piece of information. Here's what he wrote back. Well, we know for a fact that humans evolved from lower animals because humans go through a stage where they have gill slits, like all other primates and other animals past fish. Okay? All right. He said the biggest piece of information he's got is that humans go through a gill slit stage, right? Now, follow with me. This is Natural History. It's written by Stephen Jay Gould, who at the time was the most outspoken evolutionist in the world. He titled it Atrocious in German, and he wrote, Haeckel's distortions did not help Darwin. This is an article by the leading evolutionist in the world that's explaining to you that Haeckel made up his embryo stuff. Just made it up. That people don't ever go through a gill slit stage ever. Here's what he says. Haeckel remains most famous as the chief architect and propagandist of a argument that science disproved long ago, but popular culture has never fully abandoned. How long ago was this idea disproven? 100 years ago. And this guy tells me that gill slits are the best piece of evidence he's got that shows our website is ridiculous. And I write him back with the article that we've got on this. And I say, oh, by the way, you guys, Stephen Jay Gould said that Haeckel just made that stuff up. Now, this is the best piece of information he's got to prove evolution. What do you think he does when I present this to him? Here's what he says. Here's what he says to me. Through email, he says, well, that just shows why evolution is a better idea than creation.